know A because of B, and I know B because of C, and so on. And the only way to stop that is you would either have to know everything, or you'd have to be relying on someone who does. And if you don't use any of those categories, then you cannot know anything. So only one of those possibilities can be true. And me and you, we wouldn't know everything, so that would cross out that category. So that only leave us with the only other possibility to get out of the infinite regression of knowledge, and that is to be relying on the one who does. Um, and if we're rejecting that and say no God, so we're not relying on the one who does, and we don't know everything, then we're left in a world of I don't know, and so we cannot know things.
So, when you mentioned this infinite regressive process of knowledge, which means I think what you're saying is somehow whatever you know is also somehow relying on a preceding factor, and that preceding factor also relies on another preceding factor.
Correct,
What if
and so on and
the
so forth.
knowledge, what if the knowledge is not really a causational type of knowledge, but rather is correlational? Because correlational knowledge can just be tapped from experience and that's it, without necessarily have to tap into any a priori or any previous, causal function, right?
Right, but the
So,
problem is, you already gave one. The problem is the moment you said it's through experience, then I have to ask you, how do you know what your experience is actually reality? So you'll still follow that infinite regression no matter what.
But knowledge, it does also
well,
applies to you.
Hold on, I want to hear what he's saying.
Well, when it comes to that epistemological question, the same, criticism can be raised against the presupposition you laid earlier, right? But I think with the experience, right, what we can say is that we might not know many things about, the reality we live in, but our natural intuition drives us to some level of knowledge about the reality, right? Which we can
Yeah, but
also
you would have to
confirm.
have perfect. Sorry to interrupt. I'm really sorry. I have to just ask
Go
a
ahead.
clarifying question to understand you. But when you're talking about we can rely on our intuition to know things, we would have to have perfect intuition. That means our intuition could never be wrong. And I don't believe that's what you're saying, right?
Well, intuition doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. We have what we call primitive, intuitions, right? So we might not be able to have this master form or this perfect intuition, but we might be able to use the brain, our physical body, our senses as a sieving mechanism to somehow sieve these signals and interpret them based on the capacity of our brain. So we might not be able to know things from a bigger brain perspective, but we can know things based on the limiting, imageries we get for reality, which is fair.
But the problem with
Knowing
that,
something about a cake, right? Knowing something about a cake, right, doesn't make you ignorant. It only tells you this is how far or how little you know. But it doesn't say you do not know anything about a cake.
right? But again, that's our whole point is how can you know anything, even what a cake is, unless you're relying on the one who knows all. The problem with what you're saying is if our intuition is not perfect and we can be deceived, then we'd have to ask the question, how do we know we're not being deceived on everything?
Well, I think JTB is actually a good matrix, right? Justify true belief. So if what I know, what knowledge is, or what I know is justified based on experiential,
But you're
whatever.
stuck in that infinite regression again, brother. Because what you're saying is, again, because you're saying justified true belief, okay, but it's based on your experiences. Okay, well, how do you know what your experience is actually reality? Well, then it has to go through with your brain. Okay, well, then how do you know your brain is working properly to begin with? All right, but it's so you have to get out of that cycle. So how do you know that what you're experiencing reality is reality and not just figments of your imagination?
Okay, where I am is very noisy, so I just have to mute for now, and then probably
Okay.
I'll come in later.
Okay, God bless.